Korea and New Zealand agreed to speed up elevating their ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership and broaden bilateral cooperation in trade, science, and security. This as President Yoon-Luxon hosted New Zealand Prime Minister Uljin today. Russia has carried out one of the deadliest attacks on Ukraine since the start of the full-scale war, killing at least 50 people and injuring hundreds. Celebrating International Taekwondo Day, a special event took place on Wednesday to show what a Taekwondo competition might look like in a virtual space. It's September 4th, 6 p.m. in Seoul. This is Newscenter. Thank you for joining us. I'm Yoon Min. We begin with the South Korea-New Zealand summit that took place earlier today at the Yongsan presidential office. The two nations will now start working to upgrade bilateral ties into a comprehensive strategic partnership by next year. Our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon has the latest.
South Korea and New Zealand on Wednesday agreed to advance discussions to upgrade their bilateral relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership from the current Partnership for the 21st Century established in 2006. The goal is to adapt the relevant framework by 2025. This came from a joint statement following a summit between President Yoon and New Zealand Prime Minister Uljin held at the Yongsan Presidential Office. Prime Minister Uljin arrived around 11:20 a.m. and proceeded to the summit after a short welcoming ceremony where they greeted each other and highlighted the depth of the bilateral ties.
뉴질랜드는 6.25 전쟁에서 우리와 함께 싸운 오랜 우방국으로서 뉴질랜드 참전 용사들의 숭고한 희생은 대한민국 발전의 초석이 됐습니다.
It's a country best known to New Zealanders for the energy and the creativity of your K-pop and your TV shows. It's the birthplace of a very famous Korean Kiwi, Lydia Ko, an Olympic champion golfer, someone who's just recently won the British Open, and I think she embodies the very best of both New Zealand and Korea.
In the meantime, the joint statement specified ways to expand bilateral ties in trade, regional security, and civilian exchanges. Especially regarding North Korea, President Yoon emphasized the need to stand together as like-minded nations.
러브 군사 협력, 우크라이나 전쟁 등 전체주의, 권위주의 세력의 도전이 지속되는 엄중한 상황에서 한국과 뉴질랜드를 포함한 가치 공유국들 간의 연대는 그 어느 때보다 중요합니다.
In fact, through the statement, both sides condemned, quote, in the strongest possible terms, the increasing military cooperation between the DPRK and Russia. New Zealand also showed its support for President Yoon's August 15 unification doctrine, which was unveiled by the president on Liberation Day, becoming the first nation to openly support the doctrine, which mainly talks about unification on the basis of liberal democracy. In terms of trade and economic cooperation, the two nations noted that it's been a successful decade since the Korea-New Zealand FTA came into effect, which has doubled the trade volume between the two countries. In addition, both sides decided to launch a regular bilateral economic security dialogue to discuss economic security challenges and opportunities. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Also held today here in Seoul was an economic dialogue between South Korea, the U.S. and Japan, aimed at strengthening strategic cooperation. Around 100 key figures, such as government officials and business leaders, including the chairman of the Hyundai Motor Group, Chung Hui-sun, took part in the event. South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol, who also attended, said the three countries must increase investment with each other to create friend-shoring relationships. This is the second installment of the trilateral economic dialogue after it was first held in October in San Francisco. In other news, more emergency rooms around the country begin to reduce their opening hours due to a lack of manpower. The government is deploying military medical officers to the hospitals to fill the gap amid growing concerns. Our Lee Si-hoo reports.
The severe shortage of doctors and the consequent reduction in operating hours of emergency rooms that first occurred outside Seoul are also beginning to affect hospitals in the greater capital region. Beginning Wednesday, Ihwa Women's University Mokdong Hospital's Regional Emergency Center, which serves Seoul's southwestern districts, will reduce its operating hours. It will not take in any new patients from every Wednesday evening until the following morning, except for the upcoming Chuseok holiday week. Also, Aju University Hospital in Gyeonggi-do Province will only take in a limited number of patients on Thursdays, while the Catholic University of Korea Yeouido St. Mary's Hospital, located in Seoul's main financial district, is reportedly mulling over reducing operational hours during the holiday. The decisions follow in the footsteps of medical centers in Gangwon and Chungcheong-do Province at the start of this week. In response, the government on Wednesday deployed additional military medical officers to hospitals, following a series of similar placements earlier this year.
The government is initiating the 8th deployment of medical doctors today. Of the total 250, 15 deployed today are placed in 5 medical centers with the most urgent need for medical personnel.
The plan is to deploy all 250 doctors by next Monday. Of 409 emergency rooms in South Korea, 27 are on reduced operation, according to the ministry.
Over 90% of doctors who worked in emergency rooms have left. The government is doing its utmost to preserve the system through measures including the daily monitoring of the situation at hospitals.
Despite such efforts, patient groups in the country are calling for better government response measures and for doctors to return to their posts. Many doctors walked out of their jobs after the government announced plans to increase the enrollment quota of medical schools in February. Lee Si-hoo, Arirang News.
The ruling and main opposition parties are set to launch a joint consultative body to address issues related to people's livelihoods, where both have a consensus. Spokesperson for the Democratic Party, Han Min-soo, told reporters on Wednesday that the top policymakers from both parties will meet on Friday morning to discuss the details and will make an announcement if they reach an agreement. The list of common policy pledges and participants will be decided at the meeting. This follows a joint statement made after the first official talks between the leaders of the rival parties, where they agreed to establish the consultative body. Over in Ukraine, Russian forces conducted deadly airstrikes in Ukraine, killing more than 50 people. U.S. President Joe Biden strongly condemned the missile attack, promising to continue supporting Ukraine. Cha Eun-kyung brings the latest.
In one of the deadliest single attacks since the start of the Ukraine war nearly 2.5 years ago, a Russian airstrike on a Ukrainian military educational facility on Tuesday killed more than 50 people and injured over 200. According to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, 2 ballistic missiles struck the facility and a nearby hospital located in the city of Poltava. The head of the city's military administration said that at least 10 residential buildings were damaged at the educational facility. The Associated Press said the facility had been training communications and electronics officers, as well as drone pilots. Ukraine's defense ministry said the missile struck as people were evacuating after air raid sirens started blaring and called the attack barbaric. In addition, on Wednesday, there was another air attack on Ukraine's western city of Lvov, not far from the border with Poland, killing 7 people and injuring more than 30, according to regional officials. Russia also hit Kyiv and several other regions with missiles on the same day, but no immediate damage was reported. Meanwhile, U.S. President Joe Biden strongly condemned the missile attacks, which left more than 57 people dead, promising continuous support for Ukraine. President Biden said in a statement from the White House that he condemns this deplorable attack in the strongest possible terms, adding that this assault is a tragic reminder of Putin's ongoing and outrageous attempts to break the will of a free people. Biden reiterated that the United States will continue to stand with Ukraine, including providing necessary air defense systems and capabilities to protect the country, adding the people of Ukraine will prevail in this war, not Russia. Cha Eun-kyung, Arirang News.
In the Middle East, much to the anger and anguish of family, friends, and the broader international community, the Palestinian militant group Hamas has begun sharing footage of the 6 Israeli hostages before their tragic shootings. Bae Yoon-ji has this report.
Hamas released a video of one of the 6 slain captives whose bodies were recovered by the Israeli military from Gaza over the weekend. In a 2-minute-long edited video released on the Telegram channel of Hamas military wing, 25-year-old Ori Danino asked the Israeli people to not neglect those being held by Hamas. This comes a day after the militant group on Monday night first released a video of one of the murdered hostages, 24-year-old Eden Yelusami, who had been working as a bartender at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th, on the day she was kidnapped by Hamas. The bodies of 6 slain captives were recovered from a tunnel in Gaza by Israeli military on Saturday local time. The Israeli government conducted a forensic examination and said the hostages appeared to have been shot at close range sometime between Thursday and Friday morning. In response to the video showing Israeli hostages, the White House press secretary said Hamas will pay for their crimes and that U.S. President Joe Biden will work around the clock with his team to get a ceasefire deal done.
Make no mistake about it, Hamas leaders are going to pay for these crimes. And he and his team, for sure, will keep working around the clock to get this hostage deal done. And this is a president that has been pretty clear about that.
The U.S. Department of Justice also charged several senior Hamas leaders over the terrorist attack on October 7th, making it the first step by the Justice Department to hold people accountable for the attack in Israel. The defendants, including Yahya Sinwar, the terrorist organization's leader in Gaza, are facing 7 charges, such as terrorism charges, conspiracy to murder U.S. nationals, and conspiracy to use weapons of mass destruction resulting in death. Meanwhile, hundreds of thousands of Israeli protesters poured into the streets in Tel Aviv for a 3rd night on Sunday, in grief and anger. They demanded Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reach a ceasefire agreement with Hamas to bring the remaining hostages home and end the nearly 11 months of war. Bae Yoon-ji, Arirang News.
United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has called for the investigation and prosecution of those accused of having committed human rights violations in North Korea. In a report released on Tuesday local time, the Secretary General gave an update on the human rights situation in the North from July 2023 to May 2024. The report says during this period, there was a noticeable escalation in the repression of the rights to freedom of expression, information, thought, and conscience. Guterres also urged Pyongyang to ensure that its surveillance practices complied with international human rights standards. Stocks on Wall Street tumbled on their first day of trade for September amid renewed concerns over the U.S. economy. Our Yoon-Hee covers the closing numbers.
New York stocks plummeted on Tuesday due to disappointing U.S. economic data, and the uncertainty about the Federal Reserve's future interest rate decisions also contributed to the declines. All 3 major indexes experienced their biggest daily percentage drops since August 5th due to fears of economic recession in the U.S. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed down around 1.5%, and the S&P 500 shed more than 2%, while the tech-heavy Nasdaq dropped by more than 3%. U.S. markets were closed on Monday for Labor Day, and Tuesday's trading marked the start of a new month. Tech giant Nvidia saw shares drop over 9% to close at $108, the largest single-day market value loss for a U.S. company at around $280 billion. The AI chipmaker was the weakest performer among the so-called Magnificent Seven stocks, reaching its lowest point since August 12th. In early August, stocks fell sharply due to concerns about a U.S. recession. The S&P 500 fell more than 7% before recovering, and all three major stock indexes ended August with gains. The U.S. government will release its August jobs report on Friday, marking the first major economic update of the month. Additionally, Wall Street may face seasonal challenges as September has historically been one of the weakest months for markets. Yoon-Hee, Arirang News.
An international climate industry expo is currently taking place in Korea's southeastern city of Busan. This year, it's highlighting the importance of achieving carbon neutrality while showcasing various climate technologies from both home and abroad. Our Uljin has this report.
South Korea is moving to further advance its transition into a sustainable, carbon-free society. As part of these efforts, the government is hosting the 2024 World Climate Industry Expo for 3 days in Busan starting Wednesday under the theme of ushering in a carbon-free energy era with climate technologies. This year's expo is also significant because it's being co-hosted by the International Energy Agency.
The Korean government, working with the IEA hand in hand to put this expo together, and the companies, governments, who position themselves rightly in the next chapter of the global energy economy will have an advantageous position.
And true to its theme, the climate technologies of more than 180 companies and government-affiliated organizations worldwide are being showcased. RWE, a German renewable energy company, is in attendance to expand its Korean offshore energy pipeline. Offshore energy involves generating energy from resources located at sea, and RWE is known for its offshore wind technology that harnesses power from water-based wind turbines. South Korea is considered a promising market for international companies like RWE due to its ambitious decarbonization goals.
We feel Korea has a strong need to decarbonize in order to keep an export competitive economy. Many of the Korean companies have already been exporting many different products, whether they be wind turbine towers.
Korean companies have become globally recognized for their climate technology, such as POSCO Holdings with Hyrex or hydrogen reduction steelmaking.
There is a huge focus on developing technology that will help achieve carbon neutrality in the steel industry, which is why many companies abroad are showing interest in our Hyrex technology.
And in the public sector, Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power was chosen in July as a preferred bidder to build nuclear reactors in the Czech Republic. A model of the APR 1400, the basis for the APR 1000 reactor that's part of the Czech deal, was on display at the event. With demand for climate technology expected to continue growing worldwide as nations strive to transition to a more sustainable future, South Korea is expected to emerge as a leader in this sector with advanced technologies like these. Isujin, Arirang News, Busan.
Researchers believe a substantial reserve of lithium, which is key to EV battery, may be buried in 2 counties here in Korea. Yoon-Jin with more.
The core element of secondary batteries that electric vehicles run on is lithium. The crucial mineral is dubbed white gold. But South Korea still imports all of the country's lithium needs. But now, after examining 12 likely sites across the country, the Korea Institute of Geoscience and Mineral Resources may have found 2 mineral deposit locations that could have large amounts of lithium. Uljin County in Gyeongsang-buk-do Province and Danyang County in Chungcheongbuk-do Province.
이 지역에서 얼마나 지금 리튬이 많이 보존되어 있는가를 양을 확인을 해야 되기 때문에 저희가 지금 한 50m 간격으로 시루를 지금 쭉 채취를 해야 됩니다.
The mineral deposit discovered in Uljin County is nearly 60 meters wide, and its location is near the Boam mine, a major mining site in the 1940s and 50s. But the problem is that these reserves cannot be drilled to confirm lithium content due to environmental protection codes.
지역이 This area is the protected Kumgangsong Pine Grove. We've had discussions with the Korea Forest Service, but the final answer is no drilling.
The possible deposit site in Danyang County is on land owned by small domestic companies. Samples have shown that the quality may be lower than what would be extracted in Uljin County, but drilling may be possible if an agreement can be reached with the landowners.
There is a company that Bill Gates has invested in. It has data scientists and geologists. Now we're hoping to conduct an exploratory drilling in collaboration with that company.
The institute said in addition to the 12 locations explored this time, their artificial intelligence has selected another 35 possible mining locations, which it hopes to visit and examine this year to determine the potential amount of lithium content. Yoon-Jin, Arirang News.
September 4th is Taekwondo Day, and this year a special event celebrated both the day and the 30th anniversary of Taekwondo's inclusion in the Olympic Games. At this, a new futuristic type of Taekwondo competition was introduced as well. Our Choi Soo-hyung tells us about the past, present, and future of this martial art.
On Wednesday, a grand ceremony for Taekwondo Day was held at Taekwondo-won in Mujugun County, Jeollabuk-do Province. Taekwondo, a traditional Korean martial art, was officially introduced as an Olympic sport on September 4th in 1994. Because of this, South Korea has designated the date as Taekwondo Day each year. This year, the ceremony celebrated both Taekwondo Day and the 30th anniversary of its inclusion in the Olympics. Gold medalist Park Tae-jun and Kim Yoo-jin from the Paris Olympics a few weeks ago also participated in the celebrating the day.
I've been here often, so the event felt more relaxed and comfortable for me. I'm also grateful that we were invited to celebrate the 30th anniversary of Taekwondo.
It was so nice to be here because I'm familiar with this place.
Moreover, the first ever 2024 International Virtual Taekwondo Urban Championships created by the Taekwondo Promotion Foundation were held. Virtual Taekwondo is a new type of Taekwondo competition that takes place in a virtual space. Players attach sensors equipped with motion tracking technology to their arms and legs with VR equipment and compete as virtual characters in a digital space. Unlike traditional Taekwondo, age and weight classes don't matter in this format. In the championships, 35 competitors from 5 countries, including South Korea, Singapore, and Rwanda, will compete until Thursday. The chairman of the TPF expressed that it envisions a new leap forward through virtual Taekwondo.
September 4th marks 30 years since Taekwondo became an Olympic sport, and our Taekwondo Promotion Foundation is now focused on the next 30 years for Korea.
Lee Da-bin, this year's bronze medalist in the Paris Games, also stated that she enjoyed the unique appeal of virtual Taekwondo through a match at the event.
It felt like a very short time and was less exhausting. I could use various kicks without any hesitation. I think one of the biggest advantages is that players can compete without physically fighting. I believe viewers will find it very entertaining.
The International Olympic Committee decided to create an official esports Olympics, and the first edition will be held in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia in 2025. South Korea plans to register the virtual Taekwondo as an official sport in the first ever esports Olympics, preparing a new future for the Korean martial art. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News, Muju.
As the daytime heat intensified under the hot sunlight today, heat wave advisories were issued again in southern Gyeonggi-do province, Chungcheongnam-do province, and the Jeollado provinces. There was no special warning in Seoul, but it was hot like summer. It will move down a bit to 28 degrees Celsius tomorrow. Autumn rain will fall tomorrow in the Seoul metropolitan area, the Chungcheongdo provinces, some parts of the Jeollado provinces, and Jeju Island. Since the amount will be as small as 5 to 10 millimeters, it is not expected to cool down the heat completely. Temperatures in some parts of the central areas of the country will only briefly fall below 30 degrees during the rain. Tomorrow, Daejeon and Gwangju will start off at 22 degrees. Highs will move up to 32 in Daejeon, Gwangju, and Jeju. Between Friday and Saturday, it will rain on the East Coast and showers will pass over elsewhere. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
That is Newscenter for tonight. Thank you for watching. A panel session coming up.
Thanks for joining us. You've tuned into Arirang's Within the Frame. I'm Han-Dan in Seoul. North Korea is set to commemorate its Foundation Day on September 9th, typically marked by grand outdoor events and large-scale military parades. The world is keeping a keen eye on the Hermit Kingdom as it might use the occasion to send a powerful message. And with just about 60 days to go until Americans head to the polls, speculation is mounting that North Korea may stage a major provocation to influence the U.S. election. Meanwhile, Pyongyang has recently taken a series of puzzling actions, leaving many pundits questioning its underlying motives. To help us decipher North Korea's latest moves and predict what lies ahead, our weekly commentator, Dr. Ko Myung-hyun, joins me in the studio. He's a senior research fellow at the Institute for National Security Strategy. Always great to see you.
Good to be here.
And to add another layer of insight, we connect to Evans Revere, former U.S. Acting Assistant Secretary of State. Always a pleasure to have you on our show.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, Dr. Ko, so September 9th, that's next Monday. It marks North Korea's Foundation Day, and reports are trickling in that it's making preparations for a grand outdoor concert. And some reports also say that many vehicles are lined up in front of where they usually practice military parades. Now, first off, what significance does the day hold for North Korea, and how do you expect the reclusive state to commemorate it this year?
Well, first of all, it's a National Foundation Day for North Korea. North Korea was established, or the Democratic People's Republic of Korea was established back in 1948 on September 9th. And for North Koreans, because they see North Korea as being the legitimate representation or representative of the Korean nation, the foundation of the country is much more important. For instance, the Liberation Day that marks the liberation of Korea from the Japanese imperial colonial rule. So they imbue this date with a lot of significance, and this is the reason why they are staging all these different preparations, such as a large outdoor concert, in addition to the traditional North Korean way of celebrating a national day, which is a parade. So, but on the other hand, I think for the North Koreans, it's interesting that North Koreans are also trying to spruce up the national image in the recent years. I think North Koreans are trying to move away from the perception that the international community has of the country as a rogue state that develops nuclear weapons illegally, to a country that's much more acceptable and with a better reputation, more of a normal country. And I think this is part of the overall, in a way, like a propaganda campaign by North Korea to normalize the country, by extension, normalize the leader of country, Kim Jong-un. And I think North Korea is trying to project the image of a country that's much more important and powerful than it really is. So I think it's likely that the North Koreans are going to spend this date more or less quietly without launching major provocation like before. And then to somehow, again, remark the fact that North Korea has achieved a lot despite all the struggles that they're facing economically and in other ways. So I think it's going to be they're going to mount an impressive show, but then at the same time, good for us, which is pretty much a quiet time.
So no major provocation is expected because North Korea is making efforts recently to present itself to the world as a normal state.
Exactly.
Dr. Revere, some pundits say that North Korea might view Donald Trump as a more favorable candidate for its interests and stage a major provocation to influence the U.S. election. Now, I know that you're not very fond of making predictions of North Korea's provocations, but what are your thoughts on this?
Well, experience tells me you should never completely rule out the possibility of a North Korean provocation, including one around the time of the U.S. presidential election. But quite frankly, such a step by North Korea would be, I think, extremely risky, especially considering the very high state of readiness of ROK and U.S. forces. I'm also rather skeptical that such an act by Pyongyang would have any significant impact on the electoral outcome in the United States. But to the extent that it could have an effect, I suspect it would not help Donald Trump, quite frankly.
as I try to get inside the head of the North Korean leader, I do suspect that he would probably prefer a second Trump presidency. I suspect that Kim Jong-un probably hopes that Donald Trump's anti-alliance skepticism, Trump's past tolerance of North Korean missile development, Donald Trump's unilateral cessation of major U.S. ROK military exercises, and Trump's positive rhetoric over the years about Kim Jong-un, that all of those things would lead to renewed gains for North Korea if Trump were elected. But a North Korean military provocation in the run-up to the United States election, I think, would reinforce the Democratic Party's criticism of Trump for having coddled the North Korean leader, and it would strengthen the argument that Trump has been rather naive in his handling of North Korea. I think a provocation would also underscore the importance of the U.S. ROK alliance and the need to further strengthen the alliance. Those, of course, have been key priorities of the Biden administration, and Kamala Harris, candidate Harris, would surely contrast this approach with Donald Trump's less than positive relations with our South Korean ally when he was president.
So even if North Korea carries out a major provocation, it may not have that much of an impact on the U.S. election. And we'll discuss more about what Trump and Kim may exchange later on under Trump's presidency. But before that, Dr. Ko, so the upcoming U.S. election, still, it has once again brought North Korea's 7th nuclear test into focus. Now, we've discussed about this quite several times, but there are speculations that Pyongyang is now less concerned about China's stance on the matter, and that its next test might involve miniaturized tactical nuclear weapon. What are your perspectives on these assumptions?
Well, these are the assumptions that are always held true in no matter what time or period we're talking about the possibility of North Korea carrying out major provocations like nuclear test. And I think the reason why this kind of speculation, to which I contribute to it myself, is rising again because, as Evans has pointed out, this is a pivotal year, geopolitically speaking, for North Korea. This is a very important election year for the United States because depending on who gets elected, there might be a diametrically different opposite policy or approach towards North Korea. So I think the North Koreans probably want to take advantage of this situation to favor their nuclear advances. And for instance, there's already a technological motivation or good justification for North Koreans to carry out a nuclear test. You pointed out that North Korea has developed a miniaturized tactical nuclear warhead, and they need to test it. And this is a good time for them to test it in a way because North Koreans always try to achieve multiple objectives in one provocation. So they don't want to let a good opportunity go to waste. So conceivably speaking, North Koreans could carry out a nuclear test that further develops or perfects their nuclear technology. At the same time, sends a message to Washington saying that they're still alive and they are very much capable of causing tension, even like a major conflict, I would say, in the Korean Peninsula. So the Chinese show that North Koreans are not really depend on them too much. They are strategically autonomous. And also, in a way, when it comes to the United States, North Korea, there's an additional benefit of carrying out the nuclear test at this juncture this year. Because if North Korea is expecting, I mean, now it's 100% certain that there's going to be a new administration next year in the United States, whether it's Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. So for North Koreans, if they are thinking about restarting the negotiation with the United States about making themselves acknowledged as a nuclear state, what they can do is that they can carry out the nuclear test, perfects their nuclear technology, but then starts with a clean slate when it comes to engaging government in Washington. So I think this is essentially factors that are allowing experts to speculate that this is an important year for North Korea or likely for North Koreans to carry out the much anticipated 7th nuclear test.
So if North Korea does forge ahead with its seventh nuclear test, it would be like killing several birds with one stone. Dr. Revere, North Korea has reportedly added Chinese movies and TV shows to its banned list, to the surprise of many. How do you analyze the current state of Pyongyang-Beijing relations?
Well, I don't think the supposed ban on Chinese media tells us a lot about the overall state of PRC-DPRK relations. As we all know, total control over information, including everything the North Korean people read or see on television or in films, that's always been a core goal of the North Korean regime as it tries to shape the thinking and actions of its people and inculcate its ideology on them. Whether Chinese movies and TV shows are on a so-called list or not, the fact is that these media products are rarely available for viewing by the general North Korean public, so that's nothing new. Many of the themes, I'm a big fan of Chinese film, by the way, many of the themes of contemporary Chinese movies are such that the North Korean regime would probably not welcome them under any circumstances, and that's not new either. As we all know, in recent years, Kim Jong-un has made a point of trying to root out the influence of what the regime calls impure films, shows, and music. Clearly, he is concerned about the impact of foreign culture and the possibility that it might undermine the regime's ideological priorities. What the North Koreans used to call the yellow wind of Chinese influence is probably a part of that concern. Meanwhile, getting to the other part of your question, North Korea-China relations are under some strain right now. The rapid warming of North Korea-Russia ties, Pyongyang's open support for Russia's war against Ukraine, the possibility that Moscow may be providing North Korea with sensitive military technology, and the DPRK's more aggressive stance against the ROK. All of these things have contributed to strengthened U.S. support for South Korea, increased deployment of U.S. strategic assets to the peninsula and near the peninsula, an unprecedented set of steps in strengthening the U.S. extended deterrent commitment, and also a very robust trilateral U.S. ROK Japan partnership. None of those things that I just mentioned are in China's interest, and the cooling of Beijing-Pyongyang ties, I think, reflects this. So even in this year when China and North Korea are supposed to be commemorating the 75th anniversary of their establishment of diplomatic ties, the celebration has been rather muted, and it's been rather matter of fact. So not all is well when it comes to Pyongyang-Beijing ties these days.
So Pyongyang-Beijing relations, they are strained, but the recent ban on Chinese content, they don't indicate souring North Korea-China relations, but rather it should be seen as North Korea's another effort to completely isolate its people from outside world. Now, Dr. Ko, North Korea had registered 13 military submarines with the International Maritime Organization, but then removed them from the list just a day later. How do you see this puzzling move?
Well, it's indeed puzzling because, in these days and age, registering something online and removing later doesn't mean that the copy disappears. In fact, there are also going to be at least one copy or multiple copies of whatever data you enter into a website. So same with what happened just now. North Korea tried to remove the information from the IMMO website, but chances that the interested parties, including the experts, already have copies of this. So there could be many different reasons why this happened. We can only speculate about the truth. But then chances that North Koreans, what the intention by North Koreans is likely to be calling attention to their overall Navy scale of prowess, the scale and the quantity of ships they possess. And it's just in that North Korea only registers 13 submarines. Chances that they have way more than that. So I think they want to showcase a number of submarines the larger ones that they want to showcase to the rest of the world, such as the latest one that can carry, according to the North Koreans, can launch a submarine launched ballistic missile. But at the same time, I think North Koreans don't want too much attention brought to their navy. So it's a case of North Korea trying to get attention from the international community, but not too much attention.
So they want to brag about it, but they don't want too much scrutiny.
That's a likely explanation.
All right. Dr. Revere, back to Trump and Kim's romance, if you will. Trump has once again reiterated that he gets along well with Kim Jong-un and that getting along with him is a good thing. Should Trump return to the White House, what would he offer specifically and gain in return if he revives personal diplomacy with Kim?
Well, all of this, of course, is happening in the context of the fact that Kamala Harris has very strongly criticized Donald Trump's affinity for dictators like Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping, and also criticized Trump for coddling Kim Jong-un. I think that's really gotten under Donald Trump's skin, quite frankly. Trump is defending himself by portraying himself as a skilled diplomat who tried a unique way of resolving the North Korea problem. Of course, nothing was resolved during his administration. Donald Trump made some very troubling concessions to Kim Jong-un, and the North Korean nuclear and missile threats grew significantly worse on Donald Trump's watch. But as with many things that Donald Trump does, he was very skilled at creating the illusion of progress when he was dealing with North Korea. There was a lot of showmanship going on, but very little progress was made on the nuclear issue, and the problem, in fact, got worse. I think if he wins the November election, it's not hard to imagine that Donald Trump would try to resume outreach in some way, shape, or form with North Korea. But today, almost no one believes that there is any real chance that North Korea is going to ever give up its nuclear weapons program. Nevertheless, Trump might try to pursue another approach with Pyongyang, perhaps focusing on arms control. We're trying to limit the size of North Korea's nuclear and/or missile arsenals. Of course, any commitments and promises that he gets from Kim Jong-un would be as false and as useless as North Korea's other commitments over the years. And the North Korean leader, I think, would demand a lot in return for making these false promises.
Dr. Koh, North Korean Foreign Minister Choi Sun-hee is expected to make an appearance at the UN General Assembly set for later this month. What do we know so far about her attendance, and what sort of message do you expect from her?
So far, the information that's emerged is that Choi Sun-hee might come to New York, as you said, to give a speech at the United Nations annual General Assembly meeting by the end of the month, and that's about it. But we don't know exactly what kind of speech she's going to give. But then we can only, again, guess, give an educated guess about what she's going to talk about by looking at the timing. And also comparing to what kind of speech North Korea's foreign minister gave the last time, made an appearance at the UN General Assembly meeting. And the last time was in 2018. And that time wasn't Choi Sun-hee, obviously. It was somebody else, Lee Young-ho, who's rumored to be having purged by Kim Jong-un. But then, nonetheless, what Lee Young-ho said last time in 2018 was very threatening. I mean, in a way. I mean, not threatening, but then it was more about marking the fact that North Korea made major diplomatic strides. And then I think it was a major speech for the North Koreans in a way. So chances that Choi Sun-hee is coming to New York to give an important speech, and it's going to contain an important message for the rest of the world. I don't think it's going to be about engagement. The reason is because it's not going to be clear who's going to be in power next year in Washington. So it's going to be about the fact that North Korea is now a nuclear state. They are being, in fact, implicitly being acknowledged as such by the major powers, such as China and Russia, especially Russia. I think it's going to be an important part of the speech. And also there's going to be a heavy criticism against the United States and Japan and South Korea. So we can think that's going to be probably the likeliest parts of the speech. But then there could be a surprising message hidden between the lines, and probably some sort of enticement for the incoming or next U.S. administration to open up a dialogue with North Korea. But this time, the agenda item that the two countries are going to discuss is not going to be about denuclearization of North Korea, rather about treating North Korea as a power it is and somehow bring stability to the region.
Choi Sun-hee is expected to give a speech on the 30th, so we'll be sure to keep our eyes fixed on her that day. And our final question for you, Dr. Revere. Today, South Korea and the United States will meet in Washington, D.C. today, local time, for the 5th meeting of the Extended Deterrence Strategy and Consultation Group. What will be the central issues?
I think this dialogue is going to serve as a very useful reminder that the United States and the ROK are joined at the hip when it comes to talking about extended deterrence, that this dialogue is alive and well, that senior officials are engaged in these talks, and that the joint task between Washington and Seoul of strengthening deterrence has the strong and ongoing commitment of both governments at the highest levels. Some scholars and media outlets have been raising concerns about the reliability of the U.S. extended deterrent commitment, and others are pushing for the ROK to consider going nuclear. I think this meeting is going to be an important mechanism to assure South Korea that the United States stands behind its commitments and that South Korea is a clear partner in the process of discussing ways to strengthen deterrence. And that's a good thing, and it's a good message.
All right, Dr. Revere, thank you, as always, for your perspectives.
You're welcome.
And thank you, Dr. Go, for your presence with us today. We appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
And that brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for watching, and be sure to tune in same time tomorrow to join our conversation. Goodbye for now.
Completely new. But something anyone can relate with.